Welcome to my weekly review. Everybody's got a view of the stock market. I'm going to give you mine. Today is Saturday, May 30th, so the market's closed, and you're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which is up 55 points or 0.2% on Friday. It had a great holiday shortened week. You could see it was up all 4 days last week. And I just want to point out a couple things here is that the earnings season is over. And if you look back at the last quarter, the spending, the CapEx spending is unprecedented. And that's fueling, a lot of stocks. It's a lot of stocks are doing well as a result of this unprecedented spending by the hyperscalers. And so, I think the rally continues because of that spending, and we're in a strong uptrend here. Like I said, the market has had a nice 8 week rally. It's gone from 20,690 on March 30th to a high of 27,094 on Friday, which is a 31% rally here. Last year we had a 62% rally. It was a 24-week rally. Most rallies are 12 to 18 weeks. It made this high here on 24,019 on October 30. If I get track the price here. Yeah. Well, 10/29. How about that? I missed it by date. October 29th. So it made that high of 24,019 and went through this choppy period for about 5 months. Okay. And it was a 14% correction, peak to trough. And now March 30th saw the low and we started to rally and then had this follow through day on April 8th. And we've been rallying, like I said, 8 weeks ever since that follow through day. Pretty strong rally, 31%. We've been doing well in April and May, and I know some folks are saying, you got to take some profits. June, July, there's going to be some, real correction. But, you look at June and July last year here is just straight up. I'm not saying it's going to do that again this year because last year that was a pretty strong rally. Like I said, 24 weeks is unusually long. So it was an abnormal rally. But it doesn't mean that it's gonna sell off in June and July. I would think this would just continue to grind higher. Sure, there's going to be some pullbacks like we had these 3 days here. Thought the world was coming to an end as it undercut the 10-day, but quickly, rallied right back above the moving averages. So the Nasdaq made a new high on Friday of 27,094, close at 26,972. It's 11% above the 50-day. So yeah, it might be a little extended, might need a little bit of a pullback like we saw here on these May 15th, 18th, and 19th. That's okay. That relieves some of the pressure and allows us to rally higher. We saw a rotation last week out of some of the fiber optic names and energy names into software, solar, and I'm going to get to all that in a minute. I'm going to go through my, industry groups though, because I believe, the IBD industry groups, and now they shuffled them around a little bit. They put Dell and SMCI and IONQ in the computer hardware group, Logitech. And so this group now is up 213% in 2026. And even the telecom equipment stocks that sold off last week, it's still up 135% through the year in the electrical contracting. Manufacturing is third. I'm going to get to all those leading stocks and the leading groups, and I'm a believer in buying leading stocks and leading groups and letting them run. So that's what I've been doing. It's sitting on my hands with Micron and SanDisk, and I love to see it on Twitter where everybody thinks they're shorts and people are pretty bearish and they're going to correct. But yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. I love to see the bearishness though, because it's when everybody's all in is when things fall apart. So when everybody's on one side of the boat capsizes, and we don't want any part of that. All right. A little bit of the NASDAQ here performance since we're at the end of the month of May. Last week it was up 2%. Yeah, I had a nice week, 2.3%. And then for the month of May, 8.36% advance. You could see this little dip here and then the rally. So this is, last year's rally here. We got that 14% correction I was talking about right there. And now April and May, we're just cranking once again. So I don't see any reason for this to discontinue. Yeah, there might be a little bit of a pullback, but I think the index grinds higher. That's a nice month though. The month of May, 8%. I will take 2% in June. How about that? All right, I talked about the leading stocks and the leading groups, and I'm going to start with the memory group, which is the top group. Like I said, it was up more than like 200% this year. But NetApp reported on Thursday, gapped higher on Friday, 22%. This group, I mean, just pretty much all of them are just doing really, really well in the memory group, except for you always have to have like one black sheep in the family. And so Everpure reported, not a bad report here. You got, increasing earnings and sales growth, and they raised guidance, but, it's sold off. And this is why earnings are, risk events. There's a good report, good guidance, and the stock fell off 15%. That's a nice haircut. Rebounded, 9% on Friday. That's a nice cup with handle pattern, and all a company can do is deliver the goods, and Wall Street will figure it out at some point. But the obvious two in this group are Micron and SanDisk, and I know there's a lot of talk about Micron being a $1 trillion market cap, but these guys are, they're growing like a weed, and we know the memory bottleneck is going to last for a long time. And the theme here that I've been discussing for a long time is you're making a bet. If you're long Micron, you're making a bet that this cycle, it's a cyclical business, and you can see, in 2022, 2023, a cycle down. Now 2024, 2025, and 2026, it's cycle up, and you can see this earnings line heading due north. So, earnings fuels stock price. And so the bet is, Wall Street, some on Wall Street might think that, the cycle's about peak and it's time to roll over, and margins are going to compress and this business is going to go down in another one of these down cycles as it has for years and years and years. If I showed you the monthly chart, you could see the cycle better. It's cycle down, cycle up, cycle down, cycle up, cycle down, cycle up, cycle down. And this has been a, a parabolic move higher here, as you can see on the monthly. But the bet is that the cycle is going to last longer this time. And now I think some on Wall Street are coming around, and the reason is they're signing 5-year contracts. It's not just, boom and bust anymore. This is smoothing out their revenue growth with these longer term contracts. And so they can see, years out, their revenue and earnings growth accelerating. And it's pretty easy to see. So, I saw Wall Street this week. A couple firms came around with some really, 1,500, 1,800 price targets for Micron. And I just want to point out that, a lot of people are making a big deal out of this gap here, where the high on the week of 5/15 was 818.67, and the low last week was 820. So it didn't completely fill the gap. So it's got a gap in the chart. Well, it also has a gap right here. If you played that game, you would have sold it here at 500, as it has a high of 545, and the low of the week of May 8th is 557. So that's a pretty big gap there. And if you would have used that logic, you would have missed out, on like a two bagger, just trying to be cute. This is one of the hardest things to do in the market is let your winners run and don't tinker and fool around with it, and just let it run until it climax out, until the story's over, and then you can, I don't know, trim a little or just get the heck out. But I don't know. I just see this thing going higher. I know a lot of people don't, and that's what makes a market. So anyway, that's my take on Micron. It was up 29% last week, as you can see. That's a pretty decent week. It does have a gap in the chart, but I'm not going to worry about that. I think it just goes higher. It is a little more extended from its 5-day line than its peers. There you can see it's 8.6% above the 5. I mean, it was up 29% last week, so gapping higher, what can you expect? SanDisk is much, believe it or not, it's much more controlled, much more tame, just grinding higher on that 5. It's surfing the 5 now. Like Kelly Slater, it made that high of 1600, then pulled back, undercut the 10, then rallied back up, had that inside day, was it last Friday, and just up every day last week. Yeah, just grinding higher, like I said. Yeah, 15% move last week. Yeah, it's got gaps in its chart too, but here's your earnings line. You know, the stock's following the earnings line, and here's all your moving averages heading due north. Yeah, it's got a market cap of 250 billion. I get that. But when you look at the out numbers here, I mean, they're going to earn like, I don't know, $200 in EPS next year. I'm pretty sure the stock will top before that. But what's $200 on earnings worth? I don't know, more than 1,700 bucks, that's for sure. So I think this one's going higher. And like I said, wait till these guys report earnings. I think the last earnings report, the expectation was for 20 excuse me, 12 to 14 billion. They came in at 23. This quarter was expected to be 23 billion. They raised it to 33, probably come in around 40 and then raise the next quarter. So that's just the market we're in. Memory is in demand. Anyway, I'm spending a lot of time on this because this is the top group. And another stock that I like is Penguin in this group, just grinding higher. This one has got a lot of I don't know what you'd call it. It's not speculation. It's just I got a lot of irons in the fire here, and it's got a lot of potential, is the word that I'm seeking. And then back on April 3rd, this was a what, $16 stock. Now it's at 55. It's been up three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9 weeks in a row. So going on like 3 straight months of just higher. Once again, these guys have the growth numbers, and the market's rewarding sales and earnings growth, thank goodness, because there was a time where it wasn't. Anyway, I've got to get to the other ones here. Western Digital, which was the mothership for SanDisk, and this one's just grinding higher as well. And then Seagate, their CEO said they're not going to try to build out because it's going to take too long, where Micron's building all over the place. So longer term, I think the stock to be in is Micron versus Seagate anyway, and SanDisk with the growth. So that's where I'm at with that group. Oh, one more. Silicon Motion, which doesn't report till July 22nd, but gapped higher. And now just minding the gap here, just respecting its moving averages, surfing the 10. That one looks great as well. So memory, I'm a fan of. Top stocks in the top group is a good way to go. And gosh, you know what? They, I'm going to do the data centers, but they moved Dell over to this group. And of course, you got to mention Dell. The earnings report on Thursday night was rewarded on Friday with the 32% move with 460% above the 50-day average volume. There you can see there the volume coming in. That's a move not to be ignored. I know a lot of people saying, "Oh, we got to short that." You got to be silly, to be shorting some of the stronger stocks in the market. That's a recipe for disaster. You want to short some of the weaker stocks in the market. If you want to short, I'm not looking for shorts in a raging bull market like we have now. Just ride the trends. I mean, anyway, I'm going to get to Dell during the data centers. I just wanted to point that out. That market surge has moved this computer hardware group and included a lot more stock. So yeah, I'll get to that one later. Anyway, I got to get to the fiber optics, or what they're now calling the telecom equipment group. And this one, it's ranked 9, but performance-wise, it's number 2, because the market remembers the performance from, you know, uh, April and May, and it just sold off the last couple of weeks. Here's Lumentum making this high of 1,085, pulling back and closing below the 50. Not the end of the world. All stocks are going to retreat to their 50 at some point. So Lumentum has done that now. Maybe the selling continues next week. Maybe it doesn't. But if you look at this on the weekly, I mean, you got to have perspective and go to weekly charts and monthly charts. This thing's had a hell of a run. I mean, this thing was like $100, went up to 1,000 as a 10 bagger. Now it pulls back a couple of weeks below this 10-week line. And you think it's the end of the world. Well, that earnings lines heading due north, and pullbacks and dips are probably going to be bought. I'm not saying it's going to be bought on Monday, but at some point, this stock will be bought. There was a comment from the STRL Lab CEO that maybe this group might not see the accelerated sales. It'll be a little delayed as in comparison to memory. But anyway, I think the leader of the group, performance-wise, is AAOI, which is sold off and it's still above its 50. Yeah, it had a rough week. I had this one on my ready list because I thought it was going to bounce, but here it is back to its 10-week line. Um, and this one is the leading performer. I mean, it's up more than like 320% for the year, 340%, something like that. So it's had a great year from what, $30 up to 158 now. I mean, it topped at 233.67, now pulling back. But this is one to watch. Like I said, I had this one on the ready list last week as it pulled back to the 21, and I expected a bounce. The prior Thursday and Friday, it started to bounce, but you could see last week just sold off pretty hard. It was a bad week. So I spit the bid on that one. That happens in trading, right? You anticipate something and it doesn't go your way, so it's an expectation breaker. But really, the leader of the group is Sienna, as far as just steady performance, market cap, 82 billion market cap, just grinding higher. No sell-off here. They report earnings this week. This one's respected to 21 for a darn long time, ever since the January breakout here. So Sienna, yeah, they report this week. I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday. This one has the third, which is Wednesday. Anyway, could be a catalyst. And it's great for me to see stocks like BlackBerry and Intel and Dell and Sienna and Cisco, 1999 stocks just really outperforming this year. And the last one in the fiber optic group, or telecom equipment, whatever terminology you want to use, is VIAV. They made a high of 60.43, and then they had a little bit of a pullback. They had the secondary offering, which, it held up pretty well for the offering, and it's held up pretty well considering the group, the rotation out of this group. I mean, it sold off a little bit last week, right? Yeah, 2%, not bad, down to its 10-week line. So that one's another one that I like. Just because they sold, look at the earnings line heading due north too. Just because they sold off a little bit doesn't mean they're dead. People want to throw dirt on these things. They're not going to go up every day or every week, and pullbacks to the 50 are, probably areas where you want to buy. All right, that's it for that group. Once again, I said top stocks and top groups. You cannot ignore TTMI. This thing's been up like 350% this year, maybe more, 400%. 65 up to 173. Yeah, TTMI. Yeah, it sold off the last 3 days last week. Like I said, there's a rotation into software and solar and some other groups. So pretty hard rotation, but here you go. Once again, the earnings line heading due north. The stock is heading due north since it broke out of this base. It struggled at 100, and now here it's struggling at 200. It got the Matombo treatment. Yeah, if I go to the daily chart, here you can see the struggle, the mighty struggle for get out of here. This little earnings reported. Yeah, okay, we get it. Anyway, it struggled here at 100, finally broke through, rallied up, got the Matombo treatment at 200 on the 26th and sold off 3 days in a row. But like Arnold says, I'll be back, and it will. It'll get back up to that 200 level. Just got to give it some time and be patient. I know that's pretty hard. Another one in this group that I like a lot is my friend, the Solar Brothers here. Doing well. Sanmina Corporation. They bought CT from AMD, and that's been a really a help for them. I don't know how to get this out of here. Earnings reported. Anyway, I'm going to live with it. And you move on to some of the other names in the group. Flex. God, that's a nice breakout for Sanmina. Speaking of breakouts, this Flex traded tight within the base, but once it broke out, man, this thing has been a ripper. Up 13% last week, 14%. Let's take a look at this on the daily chart. Yeah, there's your breakout from this, cup with handle pattern, just boom. Then on earnings, gapped higher. That's why I say these gaps, you don't want to ignore them. 40% move with massive volume, kind of pull back a little bit. You get some profit takers, but now surfing the 5 day and yeah. So these are really strong names, and that's why they're the top stocks in this top groups. Am I saying, buy it up here? Well, maybe 147.34. Yeah, maybe. This market's so strong, these things aren't going to form, nice, 8, 12-week bases. They're going to pull back to moving averages. And that's why I had AAOI on my ready list last week, because you expect these things to, bounce off moving averages as a way to buy the leaders. But maybe this thing does want to form a base. Anyway, I digress. My next group is the photonics group. What are they calling them now? Electronic parts. They added a bunch of new companies in this group, and it's the two ranked group, the second ranked group by market surge. But for electronic parts, I didn't script this, did I? Here it is. It's down here at what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's almost in the top 10 of performers, up 58, 59% for the year. And you can see there's only one oil and gas stock in these top 10 leaders now, as oil has plummeted, which is a good thing. All right. Coherent, like I said, rotation, out of some of these names last week into software, solar, and some other parts of the market, which is good because a sustainable bull market needs rotation in and out of different groups. Coherent, sold off the last couple weeks, down 4.2% last week, but it's got the growth numbers that you look for, right? I mean, look at these big green numbers. So, let it pull back. Maybe to come down to the 50, but definitely a leading stock and leading groups, and that's why I'm showing you these things. Hail to the Vickers, or to the Vicar goes the spoils, whatever you want to call it. This thing broke out, pulled back to its 5 on Friday. So now I'm expecting a bounce here off the 5. I'm not saying I'm going to put it on my ready list, but if I wanted to buy it, I would expect the bounce. No bounce, no buy. That's the rules. Anyway, I like that one a lot. And of course, Corning, has graduated from their little ceramic cooking pots to fiber optics and other parts of the market. And they make the Gorilla Glass for the iPhone and iPads. And this one is a leading stock in a leading group. Pulled back to its 21 last week. You could see, sold off a little bit, 6 something percent. It did run up 2 weeks ago after the deal with NVIDIA up to 211.79. But a little bit of a pullback is not the end of the world. You want to Here's the thing. If you own it, you say this sucks. 211 to 181, $30, haircut. I don't like that. But if you want to get in it, you're saying this is great. Come to Papa, pull back, to that old 176.75 or the 162, and we can buy. Maybe they'll pull back to the 50. So yeah, let them come in, right? If you want to buy. So if you own it, it sucks. If you want to own it, it's time to strike like a cobra. All right. I can't go much further without talking about the semiconductors. A lot of them got, a pullback last week, but not AMD. I mean, AMD was up, yeah, 10% just after breaking out of this consolidation period. It's just been blasting higher. And the earnings line is heading due north. And yeah, AMD. Big winner in this space. Intel, we got the POTUS pumping some of these stocks like Dell and Intel. And he's kind of telling you, Micron, kind of telling you what to buy here. You'd be silly not to listen to or act on some of these names here. This is Intel made this big move from the breakout from consolidation. Yeah, it's pulled back the last couple of weeks from the high of what, 130, 132.75. It's at 114. Like I said, they're not going to go up every day or every week, but this thing is just trending higher. So you want to ride that trend. Yeah. So yeah, and a lot of times, you got to look at your stock like a Corning. or an Intel, they pull back a little bit, but you ask yourself, are they still in an uptrend? If the answer is yes, then there's no reason to jimmy jack around with these things unless you want to add. There's add-on buy points at moving averages, but yeah, I don't see any sell signs with these stocks. All right, AMD, Intel. I got to talk about ARM because NVIDIA's Jensen Huang is speaking in Taipei Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. And there might be some news with ARM, a lot of speculation here, and that's why it ramped up, 5% on Friday, and it was up a lot last week, a 15% move higher. So had this 3 weeks tight area and then blasted higher, but that 3 weeks tight didn't work for a couple of stocks. I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But that's speculation for ARM and Qualcomm as well. Qualcomm was ramping, surfing the five here, just bouncing off the five. Like I said, no bounce, no buy, and this one bounced. So yeah, I would be a buyer of Qualcomm. Maybe for a quick trade. Yeah, it was up more than 5% last week. Just broke out of this base here, straight up off the lows. Had that 1 week of pulling back, 8% pullback, and then ramping higher. So I like the semis. There's a lot of companies within the semis. I don't want to go through all of them. I like ALAB and Credo, but Credo reports on Monday. ALAB just broke out from that 262.90 and just ramping higher. This thing's a runaway. Yeah. Here you go. There's your cup shape pattern. 2 weeks of profit taking, whatever, in the last 3 weeks. 16%, 32%, and 12%. So that thing has been on a heater. TER is another one that I like. This one sold off after a pretty strong earnings report. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Triple digit earnings, 87% accelerating sales growth, and boom, 422 to 301. It has recovered. It filled that gap, trading sideways last week, up 4.5%. That's nice sideways action. Yeah, I like Teradyne. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go through all these um, semiconductor plays, but I am going to take time to stop right now. I mentioned Intel and Dell and Cisco, and I just got a shout out to my folks at Cisco Systems. I mean, hallelujah. They've been waiting for years and years and years. Back in the go-go 90s, it peaked, 2000, in March of 2010, $82, excuse me, 2000, $82. It took 26 years for it to finally break through back in February 88, pulled back to 75, and then April, it went up to 91, and then May, yippee-ki-yay, 120. I think it's going higher. If you look at the weeklies, it's just, this looks like a 3 week side after gapping higher. And then on the daily, you could see the gap higher and just kind of the stalling action, allowing the moving averages to catch up. Yeah, I believe Cisco's going higher. So BlackBerry, Nokia, Intel, Cisco, Ciena. We traded all these stocks in 99, and here we are again. Hallelujah. Congratulations to the folks at Cisco. Anyway, I digress, but I got to move on because I mentioned the 3 weeks tight. The energy group took a hit last week. I put GEV on with AAOI, and I expected them both to bounce. If you look at the weekly chart, so I'm sorry, sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes it goes against you, and those are two that I spit the bid on last week, but I think longer term. These are going higher. GEV, you can see the earnings line heading due north. And the CEO was talking about data centers, and the data centers are not going to be built in the big cities. That doesn't mean they're not going to be built. They're going to be built in, more remote areas. And that's all he was saying. And the market really reacted to his comments. And yeah, it was down 7% last week. So that 3 weeks tight failed. It happens. Um, you could say I misread it or, just the market working against me. Anyway, this might form a little double bottom base pattern here. Now, I still like GEV, even if it's sold off. BE now is probably the leader in the group. It's acting better. And you can see after gapping up, it just got this area of consolidation. It had the news with Oracle, then it had the earnings report. So it's had several catalysts and holding up well. And considering the sell-off in the group last week, the speculative play I have in this group, I have two of them actually. One is fuel cell, which had a nice run up, then pulled back on profit taking. I think most of these were down last week. This one was up. I mean, it sold off. It ran new CEO. It ran from like $8 up to 22. Okay, so you got to expect some profit taking. We saw that it undercut the 50, then rallied right back through. Nice inside day on Friday. I look forward to maybe a rotation back into these things next week. Um, yeah, they sold off pretty hard. ENLT, Light Renewable Energy, breaking out of a base, running higher. Now above 100, gapped up to over 100, up 16% last week. You could see the gap there. Earnings line heading south, stock heading north, gapping higher. Just an observation. I don't own that one. And like I said, I like leading stocks and leading groups, and that's definitely not a leader. It's a 15 billion market cap though, so it's not a fly-by-night company. All right, that's it for the energy group. Now we've got to go to the data centers, and I mentioned DELL earlier. And if you listen to the earnings reports from the hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, they're talking about CapEx spending like up the wazoo, and then you're talking about data centers. If you listen to the conference calls, data centers are growing like a weed. I think it was the SanDisk CEO who said this year they expected this data center market to grow 20%, and then they upped it to 40%, and then they upped it to 60%, and then recently 80%. He says it's probably going to be up again to 100%. Data centers are growing like weeds. And that's why the comment from the GE Vernova executive was kind of caught everybody off guard because the proof is in the pudding. And Dell data center is growing like a weed. And they delivered strong earnings, strong guidance. Stock was rewarded, big gap up, massive volume. And then you're going to get the people who say, climax top, let's short the thing. This is the end of the bull market. And that's great. We need the bears. We need all of you negative people out there um, to make this thing run higher. Anyway, Dell was going one way and Vertiv has been going the other. A pull back to the 50, like I said, not the end of the world. I like Vertiv. We'll need to see a bounce though, and it didn't bounce on Friday. I was a little surprised by that. NVT, tight little bounce here off the 21. So this one is acting much better than Vertiv. A couple other names in the group. I'm going to go quickly here. This is a long video. A lot going on in the market and a lot of groups doing well. POWL is another one in the group. FPS. I'm going to go to some of these build out too, data center build out plays. This one is up. They did a secondary offering, and this thing just like looked the other way. And here you go, IPO, consolidation. Now it's in its advanced phase, right? Due diligence and advance. It didn't take long. This thing is ripping and roaring here. Sterling is the one that I like in the group. One of the ones that I like in the group. Gap higher now, just consolidating gains. That one looks fine. And then Quanta, no crashes. Another one, capping higher, pulling back, just digesting gains. This one looks fine as well. Big moves. You got to look at the weekly chart. You can see this thing's had a big move this year. And you're not going to go up every day or every week, but you can see, the breakout here, run up, base, breakout, consolidation, breakout. You get your 3 weeks tight, breakout, now pulling back the last couple of weeks. But look at the earnings line. Earnings, 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 north, north, north. So that's why the stock's going higher. And the heavy construction group now is a top 25 group. Not bad. Is that it for this group? Yeah, let's move on. This is a lot of stuff I got to cover. Dycom reported earnings last week. The market liked it. It broke out of that cup with handle pattern, 25% move with big volume, move not to be ignored. You can see the 5-day line heading due north. A little bit of a pullback on Friday. You got to expect some profit taking. But this group been pretty strong. I don't talk about it as much as I should. VSAT got some pin action. off that report from DICOM, pulled back on Friday, 7%. Who else is in this group that I like? I mentioned Nokia. This one's been on a heater, and there's a reason for that. Go to the weekly chart. I don't like the weekly charts as much as the dailies on this new market surge, but yeah, you could. I mean, a kindergartner could see which way is this one going. Yeah, the trend is higher. Thank you very much. And then I did mention BlackBerry, which I'm going to put in this group, which broke out of a base here and just ramping higher. You can see the earnings line heading north for BlackBerry, Nokia, Intel, Cisco, Ciena. Wow. Okay. That was a nice breakout and move higher. Big volume coming in here for BlackBerry. All right. I've got to move on to software. I mentioned at the top, rotation into solar and software. I'm just going to mention a few of software that I like. I like stocks that are showing strength and making new highs. Twilio pulling back to the 21 looks fine. Datadog, another one that I like in the group. Why? Because I like stocks making new highs as opposed to, Palantir. I know a lot of people bought Palantir last week, but it's a former leader in a stage 4 decline. Yeah, it could break out of the base right here, and maybe it will, but I'm gonna wait until I buy something like that or Robinhood. I know that government picked Robinhood, I guess, for their accounts. These are former leaders that I made a ton of money on last year. And the old 80-50 rule, like 80% of former leaders fall 50% and 50% fall 80%. I don't want to buy stuff below the 200. I will admit, though, rotation into this group, definitely strength. But can they make new highs? Can they rally back through? Well, you might say, well, geez, it's just a trade. Marty, why not use it for a trade? Nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to have their own strategy and style. I'm just more comfortable buying the leaders, leading stocks and leading groups, like I posted at the top. But there's nothing wrong with these at all. A lot of them, the old baby out with the bathwater type of scenario. I don't like that saying because I love babies. But ServiceNow maybe got oversold, right? And now it's a reversion to the mean trade. Atlassian, same thing. Um, you know, Strong growth numbers, and it sold off a lot. The AI was gonna, take all the jobs and put software, making software obsolete. That was the narrative. This is one that I like as well, Frog. Why? Well, it's making new highs and it's surfing the moving averages. And yeah, I like it there. It's $71. Sure. I'm not going to chase it, but I'm just acknowledging strength here. And I'm just going to throw a bunch of these in here. Oracle, somebody asked me about Oracle this week. Yeah, I like Oracle. I like it a lot more above the 200 here. This got some pin action from the DELL report. They're going to report here pretty soon too. Another one that sold off. At this point, I know it's considered a software name, but I just consider it a data center group by now. Um, what has it got here? Yeah, software database, but it's pretty much a data center play. And Oracle, who doesn't like an 11% move? So, yeah, it's just climbing out of that stage 4 decline, and now had this stage breaking out of this stage 1 base, maybe into a stage 2 acceleration phase here. You can see the earnings line heading due north. So yes, I do like Oracle. That was the question. I guess I got to throw in Circle at this point because I don't know where to put it. I don't like crypto. I've never done well with crypto, but this has this nice consolidation here, pulling back to its moving averages. There you can see the moving average just yeah, they're really bunched up there. Yeah, so I think I wanted to show you the weekly on this one. That was it. Yeah. 4 weeks tight here, I think. Yeah, 4 weeks tight. So it's got this consolidation pattern, a little fake breakout, the old okey doke, right? And then pull back the last 2 weeks, just ever so slightly. I think this one could bounce. I think I had it on my ready list last week, didn't do squat. Probably put it on next week as well. Sometimes you just got to be patient with these things. And then I've got to get to the Cybersecurity Group, CrowdStrike reports this week. This is one of the most overvalued plays, and Wall Street just loves this stock. It's got 190 billion market cap with about, I don't know, 6 billion in sales. This thing's trading more than 30 times sales. And you think Micron's overvalued. Geez, Louise. This thing is due for a haircut. I'm sorry. It could keep going higher. It could blast off with earnings this week, but I doubt it. This thing's really extended. Zscaler reported last week and got a haircut, which it deserves. Um, you know, uh, what are we talking about here? 3 billion in sales, 4 billion in sales, 22 billion market cap. So these things are expensive. Palo Alto Network reports this week as well. I'm kind of giving away my end of the video theme, but yeah, these things, uh, man, they've been ripping. That's all I can say. They're making new highs. I wouldn't buy it up here. OKTA had a report on Thursday, rallied. This is a move not to be ignored. Wait for the moving averages to catch up. But blasted this power through the pivot here is something that, yeah, you don't want to ignore and could be actionable here once the moving averages catch up. You can see this group is a top ranked group, not top performing group. And it's gotten a lot of love recently. I think they're expensive, but what the hell do I know? Anyway, I'm just acknowledging strength in the group. I mentioned at the top rotation into solar, and solar now is a top 10 group ranking. The Market Surge has a ranking system, not performance. I go by performance, and so I look at these here. They've been performing. I don't know where solar is. I didn't look at this prior to this video. It's way down there in performance because they've just been consolidating and now starting to break out, like for solar right here. I picked this one as one of my stocks for 2026, and then my six stocks have been sucking. The only one doing any good is well, Immunome and Planet Labs, which I'll get to that one in a minute. I think the flying stuff. Anyway, for solar breaking out, Solar Edge breaking out of a base here. Yeah, nice. And then in XT, they raised guidance Thursday night, rallied up 14% on Friday. Still can't get away from this base. This thing needs to yeah, start moving higher, but you can't complain. This thing's had a nice move this year. And then the other one was in phase. I'm showing you daily charts. I should show you the weeklies. In phase, yeah, up 7% last week, just breaking out. This is your classic Weinstein stage 4 decline. This is your classic Weinstein stage 1 base. This is your classic Weinstein breaking out of stage 1 base and now entering a stage 2 um, accelerating appreciating base here. Will it continue? Well, that remains to be seen, but it pulled back to its 5 on Friday. So, yeah, I like its chances. How about that? Anyway, that's it for the solar group. I mentioned the space group, and Planet Labs is one that I did select for 2026. They report earnings this week. These things got hammered on Friday after the Blue Origin explosion Thursday. But they rallied up. So if you take a look at the 5-minute chart, you can see the panic selling, the panicans come in the first hour or so. Yeah, first hour, and then buyers come in. The smart folks come in and say, "Hey, the sell-off is for no reason." Rocket Lab, same thing. They don't use the same launch site as Blue Origin, so they didn't get punished as much as ASTS, which does share the same launch sites. So didn't have quite the rally, but still this thing was down on Friday. Nice 15% move to the downside after a huge rally from 63 up to 133. Yeah. Anyway, these things are flying. The flying stocks are flying. This is on DOS. This is still within a base, trading tight within a base. Made a big move Thursday, pulled back on Friday. Flat. I mean, 3 cents. Just an inside day though. For that one, RDW, I know it pulled back on Friday, but it had a hell of a week. These things, after breaking out of a base, these things, yeah, 40% move last week. Like I said, these things were flying. AVAV, and then mercy me. That one was up 19%. And then Mercy, mercy, Lord have mercy. This one's breaking out of a base. Up 13% last week, not bad. We'll take a 13% move every week, won't we? There's the breakout on the daily chart. Yes, the market surge is telling you double bottom base, and then it's breaking out. This is like paint by numbers, right? All right, that's it for the flying group. I can't go further without mentioning drugs. Some drugs are doing well, some drugs are not. I like Eli Lilly. I consider this one the big kahuna of the group. It's now, back to the $1 trillion market cap. Had a nice move last week, pulled back Friday. I think it continues higher. Maybe not next week, but look at the earnings line heading due north. The stock's going to follow. I think 1200 is inevitable for Eli Lilly. That's the big mama of the group. A couple of other stocks that I like within the group that making new highs. Alkerms, and then the other one is NBIX, which I might put on my ready list this week. I'm a sucker for a chart, coupled with handle pattern. I think this goes higher. This one has, the earnings and the sales profile. This is what they call now a profitable biotech stock. So anyway, that's it for the drugs. Except for I think this is a Kathy Wood stock. Maybe not anymore, but this one's breaking out of a double bottom base too and trading higher. Anyway, that's it for me. I think that's enough. Still, I can't cover everything in the market, but just kind of giving you my weekly review of what happened last week. And now, in honor of the great Steve Jobs, I do have one more thing as we look forward to this week. I mentioned ALAB, and I think Credo's getting, market share gains. I think they're going to report a strong quarter as they have, right? Triple digit everything. I'm not saying the stock's going to go higher, but I might buy some 250 calls for the week and just gamble a little bit. I don't know. Why not flip a coin, right? Who else reports this week? Tuesday, we get DG, if anybody cares. Victoria's Secret, if anybody cares. I care. I go to Victoria's Secret. Gotta have a little love in your life. And then Signet, the jeweler. This thing relies on people getting married. People aren't getting married as much anymore, huh? Anyway, go hear from them. And then Tuesday afternoon, Ulta Beauty, a great franchise. And then the previously mentioned Palo Alto Networks. These things are just, they're, I'm not going to say anything. They report Tuesday. Macy's reports Wednesday. As anybody cares about the malls anymore? Macy's reports. How did NVIDIA get in there? I don't know. It just defaults to NVIDIA, I guess. Macy's reports Wednesday. Morning, Ollie. I've never been to an Ollie store. Some people have. They like it. Oh, gosh. Yeah, the consumer stocks have really been pounded. There's going to be an opportunity there. The aforementioned CrowdStrike, yeah, they report earnings on Wednesday. The one I'm looking forward to on Wednesday is Broadcom. Yeah, you can see this little consolidation, a lot of indecision ahead of this report. Gap tire on Friday, and we'll see what happens, what they say on Wednesday. And then Viva Systems report Wednesday afternoon, and then Sienna Thursday morning. And then, yeah, that one, they're going to report strong numbers. I'm not saying it's going to ramp higher, but you never know. Rubric earnings are an event, risk events. Rubric, like most software, bottomed and has been rallying hard for 2 months. They report Thursday. I mentioned Planet Labs earlier. They report Thursday after the close, and then Lululemon, which has just gotten slapped around. Um, yeah, man, consumer stocks have been pretty tough. That's it for me. Thank you for watching at ncstockcharts.com. We never give up.